Ahoy, and welcome back to Titanic Talkline. I am Alexia, and this week I am joined by Richard Southward. Hello, Richard. Do people call you Richard, or do you have a nickname?
No,
Sorry,
it's usually just Richard, yeah.
I figured I should ask. How are you?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you.
You're in. Where are you? Where are you right now? I always like to ask people this.
I'm based in the UK in the
hmm
Northwest.
I've been to the UK one time, and I was 5 years old, and I'm also terrible with geography. But is it pretty cold there right now?
It was very cold a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
We've yeah, we had like a cold snap lasting about 2 weeks where like temperatures
Ugh.
were falling below zero.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was like hard getting to work in the morning with my car being all frozen off. I managed to get a windscreen cover, which made things a lot easier.
I feel like that's something that everybody should do because I don't do that. And then whenever it does ice up, you have that problem of, de-icing or de-icing it yourself or waiting for it's just it's it's a
Uh,
thing.
Not good, no. Yeah, I
Not
wanted, I
really.
wanted to get to work early because I want to use the sports centre before I before I start hard because I can't run with the roads being so icy, so I'd have to go on the treadmill or swim or something.
I appreciate people that are dedicated to fitness. I wish I were, but I have the worst. Like I don't look like it, but I have the worst health. Like I have a horrible diet. I don't exercise. It's terror. I need to fix that. Needs to be fixed like today. And I keep saying that and not doing anything. Well, that's being an adult, right? Making promises to yourself and then just never following through.
Well, it is a time for making promises. New Year coming up.
Oh, that's right. I've completely lost track of the concept of time passing. Do you do a New Year's resolution? I don't actually know anyone who really does one.
I like think about things I want to do in a new year. It's
Uh,
usually not. I don't end up keeping all of them. It's hard
sure.
sometimes.
Yeah, I think that for like I do the same thing where I'm like I want to do these things and some of them I will end up doing, but if I pick 10 for example, I might end up long term going through with maybe 3 or 4 depending on, what it was. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I always ask people this question and sometimes it's a really long answer, sometimes it's a short answer, but if you can remember, what is your Titanic story? What is your story with Titanic? Because
Yeah.
everyone's is so different.
Well, I think mine is going to be one that's maybe not especially original because it all started with the Cameron film for me.
Fair.
So I mean, I knew about the Titanic beforehand because
hmm
I like seeing about it in a few like children's books, and basically I was 11 when I first saw it in 1998,
hmm
and so I think I had one read like one full book on about the Titanic because it was like a cultural phenomenon already by then. So, but I didn't end up seeing it until the summer of 1998. My parents took me to see it,
Right.
and that was when I got hooked on it. Really, it was like a bit of an obsession for a few years, like watching all the documentaries that were and and just reading all the books I could. And so these days maybe it's not quite the same level as it was then, but I'm still very interested in it along with just a few other things.
One thing that I think is interesting is, again, I think we're in the same age bracket in that I saw it when I was 8. 8 sounds right, depending on the exact time frame. I remember being very cold, but that could mean anything. And that's initially what sparked my interest, but it's interesting where people go from there. Because, for some people, I know a lot of people in my age bracket, they immediately just descended into Leo mania because their interest was in him. And then for some people, they were interested in, the Titanic's survivors, and other people were just like, look at the cool ship. How does it work?
Yeah. See, I think that was kind of more with the ship than myself because I
hmm
was basically because I was getting a lot of different books on it.
hmm
But I think the yeah probably one of my oldest ones that I still consider a favorite is Titanic: An Illustrated History by Don Lynch and Ken Marshall. I don't know if
The
you see
Bible.
any of the pictures that Ken Marshall has done of the Titanic, but he tends to do the best ones.
They're incomparable. I mean, there's a reason they're the gold standard within the community.
Oh yeah,
And I know that I'm one of those people that sometimes thinks like I was an English major, so I'm one of those people that I don't know if it's just because I'm intent on being edgy, but sometimes I'll think things like, some of the classics just don't deserve to be classics. And I do think that. I think some things are classics because they are nostalgically placed in that way.
Mhm.
But in the case of Ken Marshall's paintings, they're actually just that good.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can see how like they were used like visual references for the film, like how the when you see the Titanic docked outside Cherbourg with a nomadic
Hmm.
next to it, you can see that it's based on one of Marshall's paintings.
Hmm.
In fact, in Belfast, where they have the nomadic on display, they actually have that same painting on like the sign outside the tender.
Oh, how cool! I didn't know that. It's one thing that I've brought up a couple times on the show that the Cameron film does really well. That I've seen not all of the past film depictions. I'm not talking about documentaries exclusively about like fictional film depictions of it. I've seen some of them, and none of them come quite close. And to be fair to them, none of them had that budget, even adjusting for inflation. There's just no way. But none of them were able to quite capture that specifically grand, maximalistic approach to opulence.
Exactly, yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, once you've learned a bit about the Titanic, you understand how well Cameron did with the sets.
Hmm.
I've always felt that he practically turned the Titanic itself into a character because we see
Yeah,
so much of it and we get to see the ins and outs and recognize the different areas, and then in the third act we have to watch it die. Like,
basically,
but
yeah.
I've watched quite a lot of the Titanic like films and TV shows because I did like a little I did a little project back in 2017
Hmm.
where I had like a Titanic month on my blog, and I kind of watched as many of the films and miniseries as I could. But and some are better than others. But I did feel that Cameron captured the ship best of all. Like even if you watch it like A Night to Remember,
Hmm.
you don't quite get the same attachment and appreciation of the environment as you do with Cameron's film.
I think a lot of that might have to do with resources and budget. Again,
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
to be fair to
Not with
them, and
1950s.
right, and at the end of the day, we can only judge the end product. So it's like, yeah, the Cameron film obviously does the best because it had the best resources, but I have not done a project like that, but I feel as though I should. So I've watched one of the miniseries so far, and I've seen Julian Fellows
Yeah.
Titanic. What did you think about not the show overall, but like the depiction of the ship? Because the show overall is a very different question.
Yeah, yeah, I felt like the depiction of the ship, it wasn't like so he it felt a bit generic really.
Hmm.
Yeah, you weren't really paying like yeah, having your attention drawn to it.
And that really surprises me because I haven't seen the entirety of it, but I have seen the first maybe 4 seasons of Downton Abbey.
Mhm.
And have you seen Downton Abbey
Yeah,
itself?
I used to watch Downton Abbey. I've seen the
Yeah.
films as well.
Starting with episode one, like episode one, it is lush and opulent and beautiful. The costumes, the detail to everything is absolutely beautiful from the costumes to the set. There's a lot of attention paid to it. And with that being what Julian Fellows is known for, it was surprising that he wasn't able to bring that over into the miniseries, considering that's what Titanic was also so well known for.
Yeah, I suppose with Downton Abbey because it's mostly set in the one place. I think it's
That's true.
Highclere Castle that actually exists.
Hmm.
So they're able to make full use of that and just do what they like with the costumes. Probably with the Titanic, like you say, with the resources, they're a bit more limited in recreating the ship in that way. When you have an entire
Yeah.
ship you need to create on screen.
But it almost feels necessary to tell the story. Like I personally focus on my podcast and me personally on the fact that to me Titanic is a human story, and it is to me it's 2200 lives that were all affected in very different ways,
Mm.
many for the worse,
Yeah,
and even the survivors. But there was a draw to Titanic, even at the time. Now, I don't, once I've now understood the cultural history a little better, it wasn't quite as crazy, maybe, as we regarded as, but it was still a big deal of the time, simply due to the class, like accessibility of things that normally would have been outside of one's class. Like you normally wouldn't be able to be served food in the lower class tickets of any ship. You would
Yeah, that's
bring
right.
your own food. The idea of having, your bed made for you and, towels provided, people waiting on you was a thing that only the rich could attain at restaurants or, people that saved for an exceptionally long time. This was a big deal for everyone. If you could be on the ship, you'd at least travel in reasonable comfort. That was a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, that was a big thing for the third class passengers,
Hmm.
wasn't it?
Yeah, and
Right.
I think because there's so much focus on how many features and like how cool first class was, because like it was the dazzling coolness. White Star Line anticipated making most of its money on its third class passengers,
Yeah,
so it wasn't like they just threw third class in as an afterthought. It was like this was a carefully planned experience.
it was definitely.
Like even the engineering of the third class area was exceptionally different from other ships in a way, wasn't it?
In what way do you think?
Well, they had automatic plumbing. That
Yeah,
wasn't,
yeah,
so I imagine that that would require a whole different infrastructure on a
yeah,
ship.
yeah. Because they had their own sinks in the cabins, didn't they?
Yeah, that kind
I
of
think
thing
I think
too.
there were only like I think there were only like two bathrooms for the third
Right,
class passengers to share.
right. But there was still like running water in every
Oh yeah,
room,
yeah. They had that in the rooms. Yeah,
and actually building in a dining room and lounge
yeah.
areas
They
would
had,
have
they had their
been.
own, like general areas to where they
Mhm.
could socialize.
So it would have been complete. I mean, obvious. This sounds like it's being obviously stated, but it would have been completely designed from the ground up. There wasn't a template to go off of because you were putting things in place that had never been put in before.
Yeah, but I feel like the basic structure of third class, as they actually had like
Sure.
two. It was kind of split in two. The accommodation where single men were stationed in the bow,
Right.
and single women and families in the stern,
Hmm.
because they kind of wanted to keep the single men and women apart. And that was based on what had been applied in other White Star Line ships going back to the original Oceanic class, like the Atlantic that was I believe was lost in 1873. That had a similar layout, though
And
obviously on a much smaller scale.
that had a similarly tragic fate.
Yeah, it ran aground in off the coast of Nova Scotia.
Ugh.
And in fact, I think all of the women and only one child actually survived on that occasion because it wasn't like Titanic. They couldn't successfully launch any of their lifeboats because of the
Yeah.
conditions, and eventually had to like use a rope to just kind of climb over onto the rocks so those people could survive. So if you were male and male of a certain build and strength, then you had the best chance of surviving.
Mm. That's frightening. And, to be fair,
Yeah,
any shipwreck is a frightening notion,
yeah, absolutely.
regardless of the circumstance. What for you keeps, I mean, I talked at like a little bit about my interest in like the human story and like that sort of thing, and that's for me what I find interesting. But what is it that you find interesting as time goes on, in years pass since the first watching of the Cameron film?
Yeah, I think just learning more details that people continue to delve into,
Hmm.
just even like finding new resources about it. Because I think like a couple of years ago, I looked at this new book called On a Sea of Glass, which is probably
Yeah,
one of the most detailed books I've read about the Titanic. Because it talks a lot about just what facilities were available and some of telling a lot of stories about the passengers that weren't covered before, including like some of the second class passengers. Because you notice in like the films, they never talk about second class passengers, do they?
yeah,
Except in SOS Titanic and in the Julian Fellows series. Otherwise, it's always about first and third class, isn't it?
yeah. The only two things I've personally encountered that were second class accounts were children's books. One was a completely fictionalized story, and one is historical fiction. But
Yeah.
yeah, they were both for kids.
Was that one novel about the Mr. Hoffman with his sons, Mr.
Uh,
Navratil?
yeah, the Titanic Detective Agency by Lindsay Littleson.
Yeah, I do
Mhm.
because I do that. I think like there was this. I think Celia Imrie, this actress, she actually wrote a novel about that. I haven't read it, but and I think that was it on your podcast? You did interview the author about the Titanic Detective Agency?
I did.
Yeah,
I talked to Lindsay about her book.
yeah,
Hmm. It, I really liked it. I thought it was really cute.
yeah. I'll put it on my list.
I I think it's a nice story, and it is an easy read being for children, but I think it's well done. And the other book I was talking about was one that I remember reading when I was in middle school or something. It was called Titanic Crossing by Barbara Williams.
Hmm.
And I don't remember a lot about I don't remember the characters' names, so I'm not sure if they're fictional or not, but I'm going to guess they were. But
Was it?
they were in second
Was it?
class.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It might be the same book, like under a different title. I remember reading this book called, I think it was called Voyage on the Great Titanic,
Hmm.
which was basically in the form of a diary by this fictional girl on board.
Huh.
I think it was like part of a series, like the they did stuff like the Irish famine as well in like diary form as well. But that was the main like fictional Titanic story I remember reading at that at that age, and later I read various other novels about it, like, in addition to all the non-fiction books.
What's your favorite fictional Titanic book?
I think it would be it was one I think it was one by I think the author's called Jill Paul. It's called Women and Children First.
Hmm.
It basically like covers the Titanic in the first act and then goes on to talk about the fictional characters who survived and what they go through afterwards.
Gonna have to write that down.
Yeah.
And what is your I mean, I'm sure it changes because mine changes. Like, what is your current recommendation for nonfiction? Mine changes.
Me. Well, the ones I already mentioned on it, Titanic in Illustrated History and On a Sea
On
of
Sea of
Glass.
Glass.
There's obviously A Night to Remember by Walter Lord.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book I like a lot by a historian called Tim Moulton, which is called 101 Things You Thought You Knew About the Titanic But Didn't.
I keep seeing that pop up on lists, so I should read that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I will make a note to read that.
Yeah, Tim Moulton. I think he actually did a documentary around the 100th anniversary in 2012, talking about how the Titanic might have been affected by kind of strange weather phenomena caused by the ocean currents in the zone that it was going into, which kind of created a mirage effect on the horizon, which first explained why the lookouts didn't see the iceberg appear over the horizon, and also why the the sailors on the Californian couldn't make out the Titanic properly, and so boats couldn't identify it and couldn't and make out the Morse signals, even though they were actually signaling back to them. And I find that an interesting theory.
I do too. I had heard about this only recently on the Titanic Minute podcast when I was listening, and that was interesting to consider because, first of all, I don't know a whole lot about weather,
No,
but I do think that it's kind of common, not common knowledge, but when you see nothing for an exceptionally long period of time, it would be hard to see something like a weather system or know that that was even happening.
yeah, but I think because the ship was obviously moving the whole time and it was moving between different points, then there would be I believe the conditions were changing as they went.
Right. Because there's also the context of the coal fire
Yeah,
that was happening. And, it's, we look at it now and think, well, why didn't you put out the fire? But we have a lot of resources for things like flame retardants and the like that would have been able to do that without damaging the coal. But their resource was to completely damage the coal by wetting it, and it
yeah,
would take too long to dry out before it was usable, or just waste it as it was. So they were shoveling it into the boilers to keep the ship going to
yeah.
use.
Yeah, I think like the coal fire theory has basically been debunked by other experts. I don't think it wouldn't really have had a significant impact on the structure of the ship and the way it was weighted. I think there was one suggestion that the way the coal had been placed in the bunkers because of the fire might have actually kept the ship afloat for longer by making it more stable.
I was thinking less of the storage and more of the speed.
The speed of the ship, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to keep it going faster, because the detail on this the details that, as I understand it, is that to use up the coal so that it wouldn't go to waste, they were shoveling it into the boilers, which kept the Titanic at top speed. But it would also have used more coal to slow or stop and speed up again than it did to continue at the speed they were going.
Right. Because I don't think the Titanic was traveling at top speed when it hit the iceberg. It was like sort of like 21 and a half knots. I think Bruce Ismay said at the inquiry they were planning to do a faster run the following day if the ship hadn't sunk, just to test out the engines.
Fair enough. I mean, maybe not top speed, but like they were going pretty fast, just like
Yeah,
continuing to
yeah,
go quick.
sure.
It's like, well, it'd be harder to slow down and go fast again than it just like, well, let's keep going fast.
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't heard that detail about the rate of coal affecting the speed. I think I mean, I also think I seem to recall like the fire had been reported to have been put out by the day before the sinking on the 13th.
I think part of the problem is there's no way to know for sure. Because I was thinking about this earlier today because this is what I do when I walk around by myself. In that historical details are always hard to verify without forensic evidence because
Yeah,
people not to say that people intentionally lie, but people's recounts are different. People can be influenced by what they hear, and some people can be influenced by what they are being told to say.
yeah. I mean, exactly. Like you got all the. I think it was like with the fact that the Titanic split up as it was sinking. I think
Hmm.
like there was a large number of people who reported seeing that it split up, whereas only like the most notable witnesses like Officer Lightoller and Colonel Gracie and Lawrence Beasley said it didn't split up, and they were the ones that were believed until the wreck was actually discovered.
Right. And it's that kind of thing exactly where you can, and when you look back on it, the reason was like White Star Line is like, well, if people think our ships just break the hell in half, they're not going to have faith in us. It's like I can understand that concept. We now, again, with the benefit of hindsight, are able to appoint that to extraordinary circumstances.
Exactly.
But in the moment, I can see where people might be like, if you get on a White Star Line ship, it's going to sink. Janet, I told you it's going to sink.
Yes, exactly.
I see why people would say that, even though it wasn't true. And it's not to say that people are being malicious.
Yeah, it's like easy for us to say now when we're not the ones in charge of the shipping company.
Right. It was like the Irish say it's like Titanic was fine till some Englishman ran it into an iceberg.
Yeah,
It's that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. So I know you've been to Belfast, have you? Is it? Or have you?
No, I wish it
Yeah.
would be very nice.
It was really lovely when I went. Yeah, it was a really fantastic museum.
Yeah.
Like they've actually designed it so like it's like designed with if you've seen a picture of it, it's like got four replicas of what looks like the Titanic's bow on four sides, made to scale.
Wow.
So they have the nomadic out front, and then and then at the back they have like outlines showing where the Olympic and the Titanic were actually built. So
That's
you
really
can see like
cool.
how big they were and where you stand on those spots. Yeah,
It's weird because now compared to like a Carnival cruise line ship, they're not that big, but they were still
exactly. Yeah.
absolutely massive.
I mean, like when I was there was like a big cruise ship on the river, and it's hard to judge whether it was bigger than Titanic or not, but still, it's obviously pretty hefty. And like I've seen in other places, is the really big ones.
I've seen like Photoshop photos of like Titanic on open water in scale to like a Princess Cruise Line, and it looks like a
Yeah,
tugboat.
I've seen that picture. Yeah, and like I've seen
It,
the Queen Mary as well, and that was considerably bigger than the Titanic.
mhm. It's fun in that. It's funny in that way where it's like of the time people were like this is so big we had to build docks to accommodate it,
Yeah,
and in the year 2022 we're just like oh what is that?
I think like even the year after the sinking, the Germans launched the Imperator, which was bigger than the Titanic or the Olympic.
Jeez,
So
it's
it wouldn't
always an arms race at certain once it starts.
absolutely, yeah.
Before the sort of era of the I don't know if you know the answer to this question. Before the era of the great steamship was over, what was like the biggest passenger liner?
Um, I'm not sure what the biggest would have been. I mean, like the last really great eight one was the United States, which
Hmm.
held which technically still holds the blue ribbon for the fastest Atlantic crossing. It could cross the Atlantic in less than 4 days.
Ooh,
It was that fast. I don't know if it was like is how big it was compared to other liners that were still active at the time, like the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth. If it actually still exists in the United States. It's like unfortunately it's not in a very good state. It's just It's just on a dock in Philadelphia,
Mm.
just rusting away because nobody knows what to do with it.
Preserve it.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
unfortunately, that costs money. Like you,
yeah,
like I was seeing like news reports earlier in the year about people wondering if they were going to restore the Queen Mary because that's falling apart a bit.
yeah. I don't know about the UK, but the United States doesn't like spending money on anything unless it goes bang.
Um,
History is definitely excluded from funding.
yeah, yeah, it's hard to tell you. Okay, I can't really think of like any comparable things in the UK because we don't have like any any big liners parked here. We do have HMS Belfast on the River Thames, which is a lot smaller.
Hmm.
Yeah,
You think anything I can think of here is there's a couple of there's like a couple of Navy cruisers that are docked. One is in Baltimore Harbor, I think. I'm so bad with geography. There's a couple of places around the United States where you can tour some old steamships, and I think there's a couple like areas that you can ships that you can tour that are old, really old sailing ships.
right.
And there's one that submarine somewhere. That's pretty cool.
I think there's a submarine right next to the Queen Mary, isn't there? The
Oh,
Scorpion, I think it is.
that's cool. I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yeah. I do recall now there is also the SS Great Britain, which we have in Bristol, which was
Hmm.
actually built as the first all iron steamship. It was
Huh.
designed by this engineer called Isambard Kingdom Brunel, if you've ever heard of him. But
I that makes sorry. Have you heard of the podcast My Dad Wrote a Porno?
I've heard of it, yeah.
There is the guy who writes it puts in the weirdest references, and I've just now gotten one of them because it was what was it again?
Isambard
Isambard.
Kingdom Brunel.
Yep, that makes a lot. The I don't even remember what the reference was, but it was something like something was as hard as the Isambard in Brunel, and I was like, I don't know what that means. I guess it makes sense now because it was the first all iron steamship.
But it's still around in Bristol. Basically, it was used on the Atlantic. Like it was built in the middle of the 19th century. I can't remember the exact year, like 1840s, 1850s. It was used in the first on the Atlantic run. Then it was sold and used to take people to Australia, and then it was wrecked around the Falkland Islands, as basically used as like a floating storage space before finally it was just abandoned on a beach and just left
Oh,
there. And then I think in the 1970s it was taken all the way back to Bristol and fully restored. And
wow.
basically, and if you go there, if you go like to the area around, beneath the ship, you can just look at the steel and the or the iron and just see how old it is. And they have to keep that area very warm and dry because otherwise it's going to rust. That's just
Yeah,
how old it just looks very fragile from that angle, even despite how robust it looks from the surface.
I imagine that the long-term preservation of these entire vessels is exhausting because even
Yeah,
if they're
exactly.
kept in, well, yeah, because I'm thinking of the ones that are not dry docked, for example, they're still in the water. Water wears away over time.
Yeah, exactly. And the effect of the salt as well, the
Yeah,
corrosive effect.
I was just thinking of the river, which is freshwater, but even in freshwater, you have stuff. There's, there's different chemical balances in different areas, different pH balances, different
Yeah,
ecosystems, ecostructures, different creatures. There's things in the water.
yeah,
That's it's always interesting to think about. It's like I don't know. It seems better to take it, put it in a dry dock, but then it's exposed to the elements at large.
yeah. I guess you have to build a dry dock as well.
Little sheltered dry dock with climate control.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
the
yeah,
ultimate solution.
yeah. There must be, yeah. I imagine there must be like quite a lot of pretty serious costs involved with maintaining the Great Britain at least. And
Yeah.
it's not even especially big. It was very big for the time, but it's not especially big now.
Even so, I'm thinking again down to whatever this ship that was in this boat, probably by comparative standards, that was in Baltimore. It's like it's not even that big comparatively, but I mean, I'm thinking of just the space to properly encapsulate it. If you wanted to bring it indoors, for example, would be huge.
Yeah,
The necessary space and resources to properly museum quality preserve these things is the resources are massive and the cost would be exorbitant, I think.
hence why nobody wants to take on the United States. it would just be a money hole, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's disappointing because I do feel as that not every part of preserving history seems to need to make money, but that's a difficult concept for people to understand.
Yeah, it just feels like everything has to have some kind of
Yeah.
practical use, doesn't it? Like the Queen Mary is technically used as a hotel.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, capitalism, but I mean, it's unfortunately true. People won't do things unless there's a reason. As you said, the Queen Mary can double as a hotel. The ship I'm talking about, I don't remember if it's part of the museum or if it's like tangential to a museum, but you can get tickets to tour it. So it's, not free. These are, they're upkept in some way.
Yeah.
Is there, excuse me, when you think about, especially, we're thinking about preservation and what have you, with things like the Titanic wreck that are just so far away. There's no way to do preservative measures on something like the Titanic. It's completely outside of human control at this
Yeah,
point.
there's no way you can raise it at all, is there? No,
No.
not
But
like in the movie. I think thinking of like the Raise the Titanic movie. Yeah.
I have not seen that. What is that? Is that entertaining?
It's not really great. No, it's pretty bland. I read the book as well. The book is it's distractingly sexist.
Oh no.
It has lines like very few women are blessed with mechanical inclinations, and like a lot of men kind of talking about how sexy women are and things like that.
What
In
year was
the
this
movie, they
from?
get around that by practically taking out all of the female characters. I think there's just one of any real note. It's quite a sausage fest, the film.
Excellent.
Yes.
That great. That sounds about right for because this was made in the 80s, in my 70s,
The film came out in 1980. I think the book
80s,
would have been
yeah,
in the 1970s.
70s. Yeah, it's like that sounds accurate for the time, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
disappointing it's not even amusing. That's frustrating when things don't even bypass being silly and become, I mean, bland and become amusing when they're just plain boring.
Yeah, that is basically it. Yeah, it's just quite a boring film.
That's kind of how I felt about the last few episodes of the Julian Fellows miniseries, is that it was really boring.
Yeah, the thing is the way they do it with like taking different plot lines and like going back and forth in time between the episodes.
Ugh.
It just doesn't really work.
No, it doesn't work for as short of a thing because, each episode's like 45 minutes. So that's 3 hours of runtime. That's a movie. And there are so many repeat scenes from time hops. It just tells you they did not have enough footage to make it to 3 hours or
Yeah,
plot.
yeah. I remember one of like my main interests in the series at the time is because it had Jenna Coleman in it, and she'd just been announced as a new companion in Doctor Who. So I wanted to see how she was going to perform.
Which role was she?
She was the maid, I think. Annie, I think she's called. Like black hair.
Oh, the one that got into like three different like stealing plots in the course of 3 hours somehow.
I think that might be a different one, but she like had
Oh,
this Italian love interest, the
oh, yes,
waiter, I
that's
think it was.
right. That's right. I remember her now. She always had her hair over her ears.
Yeah, yeah, she was in that. Yeah, she was in that series. This other series on ITV, Victoria, playing Queen Victoria. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, not I
Yeah,
haven't. She was good. A lot of the actors were pretty good in their roles. It was just
yeah,
a very boring series.
yeah. Yeah, there was nothing wrong with the acting. Just
No.
the characters weren't especially interesting.
There was a lot of really, really weird, especially in episode one. There was a lot of very odd writing. There was some insane lines.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't recall the specific lines. Just like shows how
Me
memorable.
neither. It was just weirdly attempting to be sort of deep and edgy dialogue, but it ended up just sounding super hokey and strange.
Yeah,
Like
I can actually. I can
the
probably remember more from like the 1996 miniseries with Catherine Zeta-Jones in it.
I haven't seen that. Is that at least amusing?
It is amusing. Unfortunately, it does have a but the point of the big black mark on it, it has a sexual assault scene that
Uh,
it doesn't really need to be there and it's quite graphic.
that's a device in a lot of movies and TV, unfortunately, is a sexual
Yeah,
assault as a way of adding depth and trauma to a character or a reason for them to bond with somebody.
yeah.
It's
But like with the 1996 series, I find there are a lot of things wrong with it. It throws historical accuracy right out the window.
Hmm.
And yeah, I still find it quite amusing, kind of a guilty pleasure, really.
Oh, I'll have to watch it then. I just haven't come across it yet, but that's again in my interest in watching more stuff. That's another one that I want to see.
Yeah, I mean, it only came out like the year before Cameron's Titanic was released, so I think they were taking some inspiration from like presumably Cameron's plans for the film, which would have been still under development then, because it actually have like one of the main plot lines involve like a man who get and who gets on board the Titanic with a third class ticket that wasn't originally his.
Oh,
Although in his case he steals it from a drunk guy. Rather than
oh.
winning it in the poker.
That's way funnier though.
Yeah. And then the guy is like, when the Titanic is leaving, that guy is like appearing at a dock going, "I've been robbed! I've been robbed!" And I'm like, well, if you're turning up at this time, then you're not getting on the ship anyway, even if you got your ticket.
Right. It doesn't matter at that point, but to be fair, you have been robbed. You're just also late.
Yeah, unless he was just like spending all that time running around trying to find his ticket.
That who knows? I mean when maybe he was doing the night after drunk retracing. I have no idea what he was doing during that wasted time, but I like that
Yeah,
gag.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll say, yeah. Just if you get really get a chance to read it, it'll be interesting to see what you think.
No, I do want to watch that. That's on my to watch list, as
Yeah,
are a couple of the other actual movies. Just
yeah,
haven't seen them all.
yeah. The Night to Remember is aside from Cameron's, The Night to Remember is easily the best one.
That's what I've heard. Or for the people who don't like the Cameron film, they say that that's the best one.
Yeah, I do like the 1953 film with Barbara Stanwyck as well. I mean, even though it's like not it's more focused on like a the story of the fictional characters rather than like examining the history. The
Hmm.
Titanic is really just the background. I do find it quite a good film.
I'll have to add that one into my list as well. There's just I keep learning there's so much more media than I'm ever going to be aware of.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
making more.
yeah. I think I've like mentioned to you when you communicated in the past. Like one thing I got after I saw the film in the late 1990s was this video game called Titanic Adventure Out of Time, which I
I've
think
heard
actually
this referenced.
came out just before the film, like the miniseries.
Hmm.
Basically it's like like it starts out we got this secret agent living in this flat in 1942, and you had this mission on the Titanic which failed, and then a bomb explodes outside the flat and sends you back in time to 1912 on board the Titanic, and then you have to go on this mission. And it's all
Wow.
like in first person, so you're going like all the way through the environment of the ship. And that actually taught me a lot about the structure with the grand staircase. And I think that was what made me realise there are actually two grand staircases, one at the one in the middle and one at the back. And you're
Yeah,
able to
I
go through
didn't
all you're able to
I
go
didn't
through
learn that till way later either.
yeah, you go through the cabins, you go into the Turkish bath, the squash court, and the boiler rooms. I thought like I think they had to like adjust some of the details, but it's a really
Sure.
even for the 1990s, it's a really great rendering.
I heard you can also see the electric horse and the electric camel in
You go
this game.
in the gymnasium, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder why those went out of style.
Yeah, there's one character who's just talking about the electric camel. They say it is good for the liver. I wouldn't know.
I I have no idea. I again on the Titanic Minute podcast, they said they did some research and found that it was given to basically to women who were complaining that their husbands were away and things of that nature. So they told them to go horseback riding or use the
All right,
electric horse.
all right. I didn't know that.
I guess I don't know what they're doing because when I take riding lessons, I spend a lot of time exercising and wondering whether I'm going to fall down or not. I don't find that particularly relaxing in any capacity.
No, I think I've only tried horseback riding once or twice, very long time ago.
Mm. I like it. I took lessons for a year. The horse that I rode he's great. I love him. He's got a lot of personality and it's fun, but again, it's also like this is a very large creature and it has its own brain.
Yes,
It's a lot to keep in mind.
it is definitely.
I feel that way when I'm walking, even when I'm walking dogs. They're not even that big, but it's like this is a creature with its own brain.
Yeah, yeah, the dogs I walk in my everyday life, they do tend to pull.
Hmm. One of them does. The other one's pretty good, but every once in a while he'll see a squirrel and get keyed up, but not like barking and stuff, but he definitely like stalks it a little bit and then just tries to shoo.
Yeah, you maybe have to. With our dogs, you maybe have to like keep an eye on like whether there's any food on the ground. If there is, they're going to go for it, and they'll usually notice it before you do.
Yeah, that's Princess is pretty food motivated. Leto is pretty good about things unless it's right in his face. He's usually pretty good. I remember once I used to have this coffee table when I first moved into like my own apartment, 6, 7 years ago. I had only a coffee table for a table and it came up to my knees, so it is not very tall. And this dog also comes up to about my knees. And I left my breakfast plate on the table once when I went to work. And I realized it when I got to work. I was like, I didn't grab it. It's not on the counter. I came home and everything was still on the plate. He left it
Right,
alone. Yeah, I was like, wow.
very good.
I know, I was very impressed. That would not have happened with this other one. I would have had a clean plate when I came home.
You probably would have had a clean plate when you left the room.
Yeah, as soon as that lock clicked.
Yeah,
That's dogs.
yeah, it's like one extreme or the other, isn't it?
It really, really is. He is a bit of a tattletale, which I think is funny. I adopted him from a friend. And beforehand, he used to have like a little sibling dog. She was a few years younger. And I ended up watching them both one weekend. And I went out to go to roller derby practice. So I was gone for a maximum of 3 hours. So, not a whole day, it's 3 hours. And in this time, that dog, the little puppy, had busted out of her cage, destroyed about $300 worth of stuff in my apartment, and was just sitting on my couch with ink on her face, waiting for me. She was a pure white dog with blue ink all over her face. It was great. And I could hear this one from down the hall as I was coming up the apartment, and he was ready at my door basically to tattletale on her, just whining and yelping, basically like, look what she did. He's like, you
Mm.
little narc.
Well, maybe he was wondering why he couldn't join in.
Well, he was free. He could have if he wanted to. He was choosing not to, which I appreciate. He's a very good boy, but I think it is very funny.
Mm.
What kind of dogs do you have?
Uh, two, he, two golden retrievers.
Oh, they're so sweet.
Yeah,
Goldens.
yes,
They're snuggly.
very affectionate. Yeah,
I wish either of these dogs was a lap dog. They are not.
that's it. Yeah,
Disappointed.
like one of our dogs, he's like he's too big to be a lap dog, but he doesn't seem to know that.
Yeah, I don't mind that with certain dogs. I'm like, all right, you can be as close as you like. It depends on how much they weigh, I suppose.
Yeah, if it's in the lines of like 30, 35 kilos, it is a bit overwhelming.
That's fair. These guys are not that big. They're not quite as big. They're I don't know what the equivalent is, but they're about 45 pounds. Again, like knee height medium dogs, not big.
Okay.
And one of them is mostly fluff. When you put her in the water, she starts looking a bit like a like a coyote. Ugh, sorry, getting off topic, but I
It's
do that
fine.
all the time. You also, I wanted to go back because you mentioned watching all these like movies and TV shows. I only know of the two TV shows, the two miniseries. Are there others? Are there other
But
miniseries?
okay, so there's the 1996 miniseries, the
Yeah.
Julian Fellows one.
Yep.
I think the other one is the one that came out in 2012 as well, called Titanic: Blood and Steel. So,
Oh, that's right. Have you seen that? My friend says it's good.
yeah, I thought it was good. Yeah,
But didn't it get like it was one season and then it got canceled?
yeah, yeah. Like it literally ends with the Titanic leaving Belfast. So
Boo.
you don't see the disaster or anything like that. You just have to kind of guess who lives and who dies.
I mean, I suppose you could consider that a very artsy way to end a show.
You could really, yeah. Maybe they're just never intending to continue it from there.
That's actually very now. That's very now. That's very 2022 to be like, actually, we left it open to the interpretation of the imagination
Yeah,
because we think it's more important for people to just be in the moment. We didn't
yeah,
want to focus on that.
yeah. Like with the various plot lines of the characters of Watershed that we've been following for the season,
Hmm.
it's he like once he gets to the sinking, and you can kind of guess who would live and who wouldn't based on their positions. And so
Hmm.
that's the best kind of resolution that that it offers.
When was this series? When was this made? You said 2012?
2012, it was there. So like for the 100th anniversary.
Yeah. Why was it? Was it just one of those things that was that around the time of the writers' strike? I have no concept of
I
time
don't,
or geography.
no, I don't, I don't know when the writer's strike was. No, I don't know if that had any effect on it. And like I
Uh,
say, maybe they were just always planning to just do the one season.
huh. I have no idea, but
But I don't know how many people watched it because it's not that well known. Not many people talk about it.
was it British made?
I think it was American made. I'll just have a look. Produced by History Asia.
Oh, well, neither, I guess.
Okay.
Huh. Huh. Interesting.
It's like country of origin: France, Italy, Canada, Ireland.
Okay, so everywhere.
Okay.
It's like when I tried to figure out, I was Googling the languages that were in the show 1899, and I was looking for one specific language, and everything I found was just like a list of every single language. I'm like, nope, nope, not helpful.
No, I don't have Netflix at the moment, so I haven't watched 1899.
It's good. I liked it. It's very now, and it's definitely a show that's setting up for a season two. Or else, if they don't put out a season two, it'll just be one of those things where you're like weirdly open ended interpretation of things. But the setup to me is that there's going to be a season two.
Okay. Yeah, I just kind of like ran out of things I was particularly interested in on Netflix, so I just kind of
Fair.
cancelled that for. So maybe once there's more stuff on there, I'll go back on at some point.
Everything hopping networks these days makes it really difficult to keep track of what you even want to subscribe to because 1 minute it's there, next minute it's not.
Yeah, the different films that you want. Yeah.
Yeah, I even see things. So I have HBO Max just because of the cable subscription, but I see things popping up on HBO Max that I know are on other networks. Like just it's like Disney Plus, for example, because Disney Plus they don't like to share their content, so it's super interesting that they put the first episode or so of Andor on HBO Max. I was like, what?
Wasn't they? Right.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's just to get people like come subscribe to watch the rest. But it's just interesting that they even put out the first episode on another platform because they don't normally like to share.
Yeah, must have done some kind of deal, mustn't they?
Must have, but it's they also Disney is also the one that made that documentary with Cameron for like the 25th, 20th,
Yeah,
25th.
yeah. There are a couple of Titanic documentaries on there because they are
Yeah.
National Geographic.
This is the one with Cameron where he like goes with Bill Paxton back to Titanic, but as again Titanic Minute pointed out, the documentary was made by Disney, but the original film at the time was made by Fox and Paramount, and Disney hadn't yet purchased the rights to Fox
Yeah.
and what have you. But at the time, they were not able to like really reference the film or use the film at all. So it was this really interesting like just elephant in the room the entire time.
All right. So was that Ghosts of the Abyss? Because that was the one
Yes.
that had Bill Paxton in it, and then there were a couple of other National Geographic ones that had James Cameron in them.
Yes, sorry, I'm talking about the Bill Paxton one.
Yeah,
Did you see that?
I've seen it. I saw it quite recently. Yeah,
hmm I thought it was cool.
yeah, it's certainly interesting. Yeah,
I mean, I like Bill Paxton though. I find him charming.
yeah, yeah. Did you ever watch Agents of Shield?
Not yet. I'm behind on my Marvel.
Yeah, because he's actually in the first season of that,
Oh,
and then the
cool.
last season involves some time travel. So they have Bill Paxton's son playing the same character when he was younger.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
Does his son look like a young Bill Paxton?
he does. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. Because yeah, I was gonna say we know what young Bill Paxton looked like.
Yeah. It's
That's
funny,
cool.
he's actually in both of my top two favorite films, which are Titanic and Apollo 13.
I have only seen Apollo 13 one time, and it was many, many years ago. I have
Okay.
seen it though.
Yeah. I think probably most of my favorite films come from the 90s.
Fair.
Seems to be what decade I'm most attached to.
Give me, just, I'm thinking of my own, like, what are three of your top favorite films? They don't have to be the favorite, but just like,
Okay.
just three.
Well, aside from Titanic and Apollo
Yeah,
13,
because you already named those.
there's Terminator 2,
Okay.
Forrest Gump, uh,
Okay.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Like
Yes.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah. There's he. Are we just thinking of that? Are we just thinking of 90s films here? I think.
Oh, I don't
Okay.
know. I was just in general, whatever you wanted to pick
I
up.
think there was I think next we'll probably like the Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King.
Oh yeah, the Lord of the Rings movies are good.
Yeah, and Spider-Man 2 is in there, so that's my favorite like superhero film.
Is that which one? Which Spider-Man?
That was a Tobey Maguire. So his
Okay,
second movie,
we're a
Tobey
couple
Maguire.
back.
Yeah, so that was 2004. Yeah,
I liked. I have. I know some people are like hate super is like, oh, I don't like this one. I don't like. I found each of the guys who played Spider-Man to be good at it in different ways. They just
yeah,
chose.
me too. Like people like talk about how bad Andrew Garfield's films were. I didn't think they
He's
were
fine.
that bad. Yeah,
He played to me. He played the character for the film that was made. Like he didn't play it serious. He didn't like super like taking it Shakespearean, and he didn't go super cartoony as to look out of place. But it's like he. I think he knew the movie he was in.
yeah,
I think he was fine. Everyone was all over him for it and was like, "What? Get off his back. He's fine."
yeah, exactly.
In the same way that, oh my god, I'm gonna screw up his name. Tom. Oh
Yeah.
god.
Tom
There's.
Holland
Thank
is
you.
the current one.
Tom Hiddleston is the only name that was coming to my brain, but I knew it was
That's
wrong.
Loki.
Exactly. I was like, no, I know that's wrong, but yeah. Tom Holland is, and it's like he does a great job in his role, and I don't know who the voice actor was for Miles in Into the Spider Verse, but like
Yeah, I don't recall that now.
I don't remember his name offhandedly, but he was great too. It's like they're all just different versions of this character in the same way that each
Yeah,
James Bond is a little different.
yeah,
They,
yeah. So I can't really pick a favorite of like the Spider-Man
fair.
actors themselves because they're all playing like different versions of the character.
Yeah.
You know the Spider-Verse sequel I think is coming out next year.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. I liked the first one. I thought it was neat.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I think it's pretty much the only like 2013 to 2023 film that I'm looking forward to apart from the Titanic re-release.
I'm really excited for that because that'll be the first time I've personally seen it in theaters since the 90s. I didn't catch any of the other re-releases.
Yeah, and when I went to see it in 2012, that was what actually got me to admit that Titanic was my favorite film because otherwise before then I was a little bit embarrassed about it because there came this point where it just wasn't cool to like Titanic.
I yeah, I guess I could see that. I mean, it's always been okay. It's always been one of my favorites, but I can see where there was a time where it wasn't in vogue. But there was also, again, a time where the movie was the wheel hadn't kicked back up again, and it was kind of falling off the cycle for a while.
In terms of like what people were thinking of it.
Yeah, yeah, popularity. What's quote unquote
Yeah,
trending these days.
just because it was like so popular in the immediately after it came out and everybody was talking about it and referencing it in other places, it just got a bit overwhelming, and then there was kind of that backlash the other way.
Yeah, it's overcorrecting, and I think people are starting to find healthier balances again, which I think is
Yeah,
good. There's room for people to be enthusiastic about their hobbies. Just because you
yeah,
don't get it doesn't mean it's bad.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Ugh, oh well. Hopefully, more people will figure that out.
yes, that will be good.
Well, I talked about New Year's resolutions way earlier, but in 2023, do you have any like Titanic related goals, like places to see, or
Um, well,
besides?
I'm mainly thinking of like going to. I'd like to go to the States because I
Yeah,
haven't been there for a little while. Not for like Titanic stuff, more for like space related stuff because I'm
sure.
also quite interested in space travel. Like I want to go back to the Kennedy Space Center because I last went there in 2013 and
Hmm.
they've changed a lot since then. They put like Space Shuttle Atlantis on display now,
Yes,
and they'll have other displays there as well.
I know that they've updated the Air and Space Museum in the DC area probably since
Yeah,
the last time you were there.
I went there in 2009.
That's one of my favorite museums. I love
Yeah,
that place.
that was great. Yeah.
I don't I know I'm sure there's probably a lot in Houston.
See, yeah, there will be. I haven't been to. I think I only went to Houston once as like a layover for going somewhere else. So I thought
Fair.
I was just like staying in a hotel overnight and then just straight back to the airport, so I didn't get a chance to look around.
Understood,
But,
but
but I will
if
have
you
to go there at some point.
yeah, if you're interested in space, that seems like a place here
Yeah,
to
exactly.
to go.
So I mean, how far away from Houston is where you live?
I'm in Austin and geez, let me see. Well, I just
Well,
talked about
Texas
two
is a
hours.
big state, isn't it?
It is a big state. It's a few hours away, but I can't remember exactly how many. From Austin, Houston is about 3 hours.
Okay,
So not too terrible.
terrible.
No, and Austin itself is a cool city. Nothing really space or Titanic related, but it got a lot of music and just kind of like cool stuff to do. It's
Okay.
like a fun city.
Yeah.
At least that's what, my experience and everyone tells me. So,
Okay.
well, Richard, I have taken up basically an hour plus of your time. I'm going to thank you so much for coming on the show and for talking to me about, yourself and the history with the ship.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I am definitely going to have to pick his brain about which things to watch next because it turns out a lot of them are mediocre and some of them are pretty good. And if you want to get in touch with Richard, as you should find him on his Twitter, RJ Southworth. That is RJ underscore Southworth, SOUTHWORTH. And you can also check out his blog. That is velociraptor256.wordpress.com. And I will see you in the next one.